the government of Orissa in institutional capacity building. We would request Dr. Amirama Mishra, the Director of the Internal Quality Assurance Cell, NLUO, and Faculty of Management, to introduce Mr. Bagchi.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am here to talk to you guys because it's a time or moment for me to introduce something behind the cover. And it's when I'm given the task of introducing our guest to the long list of accomplishments which defines perseverance. He started his entrepreneurial journey of self-discovery at the age of 6 by selling balloons. And there was no looking back. The unstoppable sequel of self-efficacy, doomed to global acclaim as founder of Mindtree. His journey of resilience and pursuit of excellence in building an empire, inspiring young innovative minds to becoming an acclaimed author, has been phenomenal. He has been the voice of faith and assurance during the outbreak of COVID pandemic as the chief spokesperson of Orissa government. He is a ray of hope as he, as a pro bono, became the chief advisor to the Skill Development Authority of Orissa. And now, as chief advisor to the institutional capacity building, we are looking forward to the trajectory changes he is going to make, and we at NLUO are looking forward to how can we contribute to implementing phenomenal changes in the business. He begins to introduce his book, I took from a book, The High Performance Interim, published in 2006, stating that there are 6.5 billion people around, and the avenues for employment and growth can only be done by new entrepreneurs. But what strikes me and a lot of people around here is today in 2024, with 8.1 billion people on this planet, you are that one to renounce all the riches, all the people of Orissa. That's just huge. You must be wondering as to what is this illuminating spiritual complexity that the sum of this soil has to offer, which is left limited to human kind. For those who understand the true meaning of life, he is the reason why people still believe in beautiful souls coming out and good energy. We are indeed honored to have you with us, and I'm happy to welcome you. Thank you so much.
Honorary Vice Chancellor, Professor Kumar, is a renowned name in the legal field. It was under her able guidance that NLUO has launched Project Kudo in furtherance of the goal of the Government of India towards inclusive development. NLUO has adopted three villages under Project Kudo: Rajviharipur, Balmekinagar, and Bahadur, and aims to make necessary interventions in these villages to make them child-friendly and achieve the necessary sustainable development goals. We would request Great Man to give the weather address for today's event.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so pleased to have Mr. Bagchi on us today. I've been wanting to have him for some time. But when I approached him first time, he said he was still trying to clear his LLB, which he started in 1979. 76 or 79. But he could not clear the 6 semester at that time. And as the rule is, if you don't clear your DA within 6 years, you don't get a chance. But anyways, I was celebrating his 100th year, celebrating literature, so they gave a golden chance to all the students who had taken admission at some stage in the university, but had not finished. And look at his zeal. He wanted, this was rampant with him that he had taken admission in LLB, but he hadn't finished it. So after so many years, he said, I'll come to NLUO once I cleared my degree. And I please think what happens if you don't. But of course it has, and he's here among us. I was very pleased to meet him just a week ago. And his humbleness, his achievement, and his commitment to the society are all so inspiring. I told him that I'm a fan, and I have two questions. How did you make so much money? So that was very thrilling to me that somebody who has come from an ordinary background, from a government school to education, did not have British company past, did not have companies to be working in the father's basis. Everything he has created himself. So how did you manage to create billions? And then on top of it, to give it all away. And his answers were very, very inspiring to me. Not only he, but the whole family. They've got two daughters, both of them are teaching and are happy with their teaching job and all. They didn't want the riches. They said this is beyond, this is not our money. Up to what extent would you take and make profits from the work that you started? How much money is yours? Very difficult question to decide because all of us believe that if I put in money, then everything I get is my money. That was for me a very, very revealing answer, the way he said it. That beyond this, I think this is money generating not for me and my family, and family to that. Lots of stories he has from his life that I've been from one of his books. And I'm so happy that he's here today in person. And I'm so happy that so many of it turned up. I think it's a golden opportunity for all of you to really see and interact with a person who can tell us so many things from his own experience. All of us aspire to be rich, but after all of us aspire to be big officers, all of us aspire to be somebody at some level. But after that, what? And I think he has got lots of suggestions and answers to that. I really hardly let him do this thing. And I look forward to telling what we say as the words of wisdom and the humility with which he speaks. He speaks millions of tons of appreciation from all of us. Thank you very much once again and welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, ma'am. The National Law University was established in the year 2009. Within a short span of time, it has made its mark as a university engaged in imparting socially relevant education. NLUO has made its mark as a university drawn from experiences of other institutions across the world and has embarked upon a rare
We will now be commencing with today's session by Mr. Subroto Bagchi on why IIT is state. Also, we shall not invite the audience to view a video on decoding integrity to kickstart the session. We request the video to be played.
Good afternoon. Actually, I'm very glad to be here. And I was telling Vice Chancellor Ma'am that this is a best fit for a rock band, not for somebody like me to come and talk to you about this song. And in your shoes, I love that we have a rock band which feels so high that it goes higher than it was made by the air conditioners. But I hope that you'll be able to hear me. Can you hear me? I want to start off by asking a question. I'm sure many hands will be raised in answer. How many of you know the BMW case? It's famously known as the BMW case, and faculty is not supposed to answer this question. So which of the students will be able to tell you about the BMW case? No, nobody? No one? Would faculty know about the BMW case? It's a very famous case. The BMW case, so let me give you a clue here. This was a case involving two lawyers. They were the, son of a very rich family in Delhi, was under the influence of alcohol, and he was recklessly driving. So he ran through a police chowki in Delhi and mowed down a set of people, including 3 policemen. So about 6 people, if I remember correctly, died on the spot, including 3 policemen. So this is the case, and I'm sure somebody will know this case now. This is famously known as the BMW case because the person was driving the vehicle. The vehicle was a BMW. The vehicle owner was driving a BMW. Now, okay, so this young man, under the influence of alcohol, drove his BMW car to a police checkpost and on the spot killed 6 people. Got down from the car to inspect what has happened, realized what has happened. He was with 2 other friends. They went back into the car snowballs. Now, one policeman actually followed the trail of diesel that the car had dropped all the way. In the meantime, the driver and his friends had taken the car to a friend's place and washed the car clean and then brought it back. The policeman actually tracked it down, and then obviously there was a criminal case. So these are rich and very influential people of Delhi. So they said they hired the best lawyer possible, and they took the position that first of all he was not driving, and they took the position that the accident was caused by a truck and a truck driver. The case was long drawn like any other criminal case, and nobody would have really realized, but along the way there was a whole lot of witnesses, and one after the other, the prosecution witnesses turned hostile. So finally there was one eyewitness, and the case really critically depended on the deposition of this one eyewitness. His name was Kulkarni. Just before that could happen, the prosecution lawyer, gentleman called Ayub Khan, and the defense lawyer, gentleman called Mr. Anand, they colluded, and they made an offer to the person that if a certain amount of money is paid, he should also turn hostile. Unfortunately, this was filmed, and this was aired live by NDTV. So this caused a huge furor. Mr. Anand was the defense lawyer, but actually had the reputation of not only being a senior advocate, but he had represented two sitting prime ministers of India in different periods of time. Why am I telling you this story? Now, doesn't somebody like Mr. Anand and doesn't somebody like Mr. Ayub Khan know about professional ethics? And here are people who actually are at the highest level of professional capability. They know all that there is to be known in terms of legal knowledge and what is acceptable legal behavior or acceptable behavior of professionals in the practice of law. And yet, they did a stupid thing. The defense and the prosecution colluded to make a financial offer to a witness to become hostile. The interesting thing to ask is, in terms of professional competence, in terms of legal knowledge, you cannot fault these two lawyers. They're as good as. Where is it that they failed? Why? We need to understand professional competence is not equal to professionalism. Professional competence requires integrity, and these two people failed to have integrity. Now, these are intelligent people. So how come intelligent people do stupid things? I'm not holding up these two people. No? Nobody? Okay. So Rajat, there you are. Please tell us who's Rajat Gupta. Did you raise your hand? Yeah.
Rajat Gupta was a very famous McKinsey consultant. He was a famous one at Harvard, and he basically got caught inside and created his entire career to sort of collapse.
Of McKinsey worldwide. And when he used to go to the World Economic Forum in Davos, presidents and prime ministers of countries would actually line up to have a side conversation with him. So what Rajat Gupta said mattered to presidents and prime ministers of countries. When Rajat Gupta became the chairman emeritus of McKinsey, the whole world actually looked up to him. Later on, he was on the board of Goldman Sachs. And while he was on the board of Goldman Sachs, one Sachs. After some critical decisions were taken, he came out of the meeting and he called his friend, who was his, was his buddy in UPenn during their student career, picked up the phone and talked to him something which led this friend to do a trade in Goldman Sachs. And this got to be known. So in the United States, this is serious economic offense. So Rajat Gupta was tried and he was jailed. He was put behind the bar like an ordinary criminal. In India, every other day if you read the newspaper, you will hear many such examples of people who we have looked up to, and that at some part of their career, they have gotten clay feet and they have fallen from grace. There's a very famous banker, a woman banker who headed ICICI Bank and was looked upon as a role model for all young Indians, not just for women, but young Indians, of how through the dint of labor, hard work, perseverance, and intellect, you can go and lead one of the largest private sector banks in the country. And lo and behold, what happens? The lady's husband does some favor trading with some businessmen, and now she is putting out of jail. So the point that I'm trying to make is that these are high capability people, these are high intelligence people, and yet sometimes they go horribly wrong. I have felt, having worked in the private sector and with the government, and seen professionals in various walks of life, that good people often do bad things because of a momentary failure of judgment. Bill Clinton is a great example of that. He's one of the probably 0.00001% of highly capable, highly intelligent people on the planet. You didn't need to let Bill Clinton know what is appropriate behavior and what is not appropriate behavior in the Oval Office. But in that moment, something goes wrong. So people get into failure of judgment for whatever reason. That failure of judgment actually leads to a failure of integrity. You will find that great people and great institutions often fail not because of other reasons, but because of governance. Even today, you will find highly capable people, great institutions flounder when governance goes out of the window. So today I want to talk to you about what is this integrity and how do we relate to integrity at a personal level. I would like you to first understand what is integrity. A lot of people have difficulty. They intellectualize the idea of integrity. But the word integrity has a link to the word integer. It's a whole number. So when you break integrity, it's like you break something inside. So it's a whole number. And what is the meaning of integrity? How do we follow the principle of integrity in our personal life and our professional life? What I would like to do is to show you a short film on that, a 10-minute film, and then I would like to expand on it. After that, let's have a free interaction between ourselves. Can we have the movie, please?
Many people have difficulty understanding the idea of integrity, and we talk about integrity as something that is a bridge between competence and professionalism. A professional has to be a person of high integrity. So when I interact with leaders, they ask me how do we have a more definitive interpretation of integrity? How do we relate to integrity in terms of certain rules and rules? So as we dialogue, they offered to me at one point in time that the idea of integrity is first of all about wholeness. The word integrity is about whole. So anything that lacks integrity is actually broken inherently. So that's a starting point. Then we talk about integrity, and it's such just 4 things. If I follow those 4 things, chances are very high that I won't have any problems. So don't need a very philosophical understanding of the integrity. So first and foremost, it is about following the law. We follow the law wherever law exists. And not just in the country of our origin, but we need to follow the law of wherever we're doing business. Now, when we follow the law, there are 2 inherent problems with it. One problem is sometimes the law is uncomfortable, but you can't not follow that law because it's uncomfortable. So, the right thing to do is not to create a short circuit, but to protest against the law. But pending resolution, still follow the law. So sometimes, the sales tax laws are uncomfortable, the income tax laws are uncomfortable. Some law related to inspection of my factory and premises is uncomfortable. So I must raise my voice against it in the appropriate forum, go to a court of law. But pending that, not circumvent. It's very important not to cherry pick laws. Because when we individually cherry pick, collectively the system fails. I cherry pick a certain set of laws, you cherry pick a certain set of laws. I like the law relating to right to property, but I don't want to follow the guys. So that's cherry picking. I think that's partly the problem with us Indians today, in cherry picking laws. So one is following the law exists, not to cherry pick. So that's number one. But the interesting thing is in life and living, for everything there cannot be a law. So where a law does not exist, our job is to use fair judgment. It's a very interesting concept. Fair judgment comes from the idea of fairness. Idea of fairness has nothing to do with intellect, nothing to do with education. Even if you look at how children react to each other in the playground, small babies, 3-year-old, 2.5-year-old, there is inherent fairness in it. So we are factory fitted with fairness. Mother Nature actually sends us with the idea of fairness. So deep inside us, we know what is fair and what is unfair. So when a law doesn't exist, I don't want to hijack the situation and do my own thing. I need to step back and say, is this fair? Chances are very high that in 98% of cases, I will immediately know what is the right thing to do. So look at a baby who takes a ball from the neck of another baby in a park, both mothers talking, or both parents talking in a corner, and these 2 babies are different. So the other baby begins to cry. The baby that is taking the toy or look perplexed for a moment, and then the next moment hand over the toy. That baby knows what's fair. So if follow the rules exist. Second, when rules don't exist or law doesn't exist, we use fair judgment. But there are times when a law does not exist, and I may not really know that I'm being fair. What is fairness? In a situation like that, the thing to do is to seek help. Many problematic situations in life, in our professions, in corporate life, personal life, could be avoided if before doing something, we just picked up the phone and we spoke to a spouse or spoke to a mother. It doesn't have to be professional activity, sorry, counselor or a coach. Spoke to a trusted friend, but spoke to someone who doesn't have a vested interest in their mother. So I somewhat in a lot of people that before you call the bank, all you have to do is to call mom and say, "Mom, I'm planning to have a bank." Because it's a good idea. 99% of the cases, you get a mouthful from mom, and she'll say, "No, it's just a good idea." So before you walked out of a boardroom and gave your friend clues about trading in the share of that company whose name you are going to off, all you have to do is to call mom and say, "Mom, I'm going to do a little bit of insider trading, tell you right?" So you don't seek counsel after doing something. You don't shoot first and take aim. So the thing to do is, when in doubt, reach out for help, seek counsel. Go to somebody with no vested interest and say, look, I'm planning to get into the insider trading here, I'm planning to rob a bank here, I'm going to cheat somebody, do things in that way. So, number one, follow the rules, the rules exist. Number two, when rules don't exist, use fair judgment. Number three, when you are confused about one and two, seek counsel before you end up doing something to regret it. The fourth thing is, I should be always aware that, there is a right and there is a inconvenient. And life is about choosing the right and inconvenient. When we do it, or rather when we not do it, we will follow the precept that I should choose the right and inconvenient, will have some sense of shame. Most animals don't have a sense of shame. They don't need it. They're actually completely factory fitted with fairness and they live life with fairness. But higher intelligence beings have a sense of shame. And man has the highest sense of shame. The sense of shame is created in us so that we are conscious about this and public scrutiny. If I can drive naked and it doesn't cause me shame, what's the big deal? So we need to be aware of one simple thing, that my private act should not cause me public embarrassment. So if that principle of shame is inside of me, chances are very low that I'll do something wrong. More importantly, I'll do something wrong when nobody is watching. The temptation to do something wrong when nobody is watching becomes very high. But that will all I have to do is, okay, so what happens if suddenly the lights are on, somebody walks into existence and there's a crime looking at me, or the newspaper has just published that, last night I did something, will it be comfortable conversation around the dining table? Will I feel good that my 12-year-old kid says that is a secret? So that's all there is thinking to me.
Thank you so much. So, all my life I have spent watching people very closely, high achievers like yourselves very closely. And I wrote a book called The Professional a long time ago. When I was wondering about what is it that you must have as a quality to be called a professional. And at that time, looking at the whole range of professionals, I realized that there are two fundamental things that one must have. One is, each one of us must have the capacity to work unsupervised. If you and I cannot work unsupervised, then we can't be called a professional. The second important thing is not only we should be able to work unsupervised, but we should be able to certify the completion of our own work. Let me expand a little bit on that. Let us say your senior is asking you to write a brief, or you are making a case on behalf of a public interest litigation on behalf of an NGO, and you are writing a 50-page document giving all the facts and figures, like burning the midnight oil. Only you can certify whether it was done in the best possible manner. Nobody else will know. Only you will know whether more effort was necessary in producing that. So first and foremost, you and I should be able to work unsupervised. And secondly, we should be able to certify the completion of the work that we are doing, that it couldn't have been done any better. But these two things don't really make us a professional. These two things give us competence. What Ayub Khan had, and R.K. Anand had, and Rajat Gupta had, and so many of these high achievers had, was competence. But what makes competent people truly professional is integrity. Only when they are able to demonstrate integrity or probity in their personal life and professional life that they can truly be called professionals. With that, let me pause for a little while, and instead of making a monologue, why don't you lead me with some questions from your end, and let's have a small dialogue around this. So who goes first? I have this sun on my face, so I can't see half of it. You have seen this video, you have heard me speak up there, there's a young lady there. Yes, ma'am. Or are you just the keeper of the microphone? No? Are you ready to say bye-bye to me? Surely somebody has some thoughts. Okay, it doesn't have to be a question, it can be a viewpoint.
Good afternoon, sir.
Hi.
So, in your book, The Professional, you have talked about the importance of integrity in the profession, right? So, what advice would you like to give to the budding professional, such as law students, who are aware about the lack of integrity in the field they are entering into and but are expected to play by the unjust rules?
What was the last part of your question? What was the last sentence?
So the last part was that the law students were aware about the lack of integrity in the field they are entering into, but they are supposed to play by the unjust rules.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. It's a very difficult field. You know, lawyers are people who see the worst of society. Lawyers and journalists actually see the worst of society. You see, people without their clothes on. So the question is, and you have to be, let's say you are a defense lawyer and you know very well that the client, is a sinner. But you're representing the client and you are duty bound to represent the client. And you see many such incidents, and you see, the wheels within wheels. How is it that you can maintain your own professional integrity while you are dealing with people who have demonstrated lack of integrity? Is it possible? I think there's a professional obligation, but we need to draw a very clear line. You have your professional duty to the client, but internal to yourself, can you break your own integrity? Not an easy thing, particularly because I find many young people who join the profession of law actually see terrible things in courts. They see terrible behavior by their colleagues. Many people are lucky not to go into litigation, but they join, let us say, corporate law. And again, within that, you will see the dark side of things. So, how do you actually maintain your balance in that? I think you need to build your own code of conduct inside your mind. And you need to be faithful to that code of conduct without wavering. And I told about these 4 things: that you will follow the rule when the rules exist, that you will use fair judgment when the rules don't exist, when you are in doubt, you will seek counsel, and your private act must stand public scrutiny without causing you embarrassment. So this is my way of looking at the idea of integrity. But you need to build your own code. You can't have a life where the code does not exist, that you have no code. And you need to be faithful to that code. A lot of people have difficulty for the following reasons. First and foremost, when you enter your profession, you will find you are going to enter a very rich profession. You are a student of National Law University. So it is as good as it gets. It's the highest and the best in the country. So you will be very well paid. Money will not be a problem for you. But you will find that even in a very well-paying profession, a lot of people have scarcity mindset. When they have a scarcity mindset, they often will sacrifice the means for the end. So one needs to be very wary about this scarcity mindset. How much is enough? When you enter your profession and people tend to measure your success with money, many times we start making false comparisons. Okay, I need a car, I need a home, but you then see that the other person, your batchmate, has 2 cars and 2 homes. You see that you're taking a holiday with your kids to Shimla, and you find that your batchmate is taking kids to Barcelona. Okay? So you start making false comparisons. The moment you get into that path, then what happens is you are becoming victims of this scarcity mindset, and then you start cutting corners. Then you start sacrificing the means to the end. So one needs to be very wary about it. The second thing that you need to be very wary about is when you enter your life, you will often get bad counsel in the beginning of life. You know, when you come out of the law college, law university, and you work for a senior, many of the seniors actually will have poor moral standards. But to you, they become the gatekeeper to professional excellence. So we need to be working our way through a maze without getting the DNA of the wrong kind of role models to be actually impacting us. So we have to work with all kinds of people. And we can't be, doing value judgment on other people. But we need to understand how much to emulate those people in our real life. The third thing that happens is, I've found that a lot of people actually work with very aggressive, very bad bosses early in their life. And one needs to be very wary of that, because some of these people actually can be, the encounter role models, as I call them. When you join police, for example, in police you are all very familiar with the whole encounter idea. So there is a boss who wants the youngster to do an encounter. The boss's hands are clean, and the young person tries to please the boss because you are young and you are very impressionable, so you go along with the boss. Now that is the point where you have to basically go to the 4 points that I talked about and use your fairness. Now, the moment you start pleasing your boss early in life, and the bad boss early in your life, then the price that you may end up paying can be very, very high. And that can be a one-way street for many people. A lot of people will actually entice you with in-kind transactions. There is cashless, a lot of cashless transactions which are basically favor trading. And once you get into that kind of a favor trading mindset, you again can lose your sense of integrity. So it's not easy. And we somehow feel that, everybody is doing it, so what's wrong with me doing a little bit of that? But it is something where the moment we give in, most of the times, not always, but most of the times, it tends to be a one-way street, and you can't come out of that. So life will have its own tests, and life is always full of situations where you will be asked to choose between the right and the convenient. So given a choice between the right and the convenient, which one do you take? So the right is many times quite inconvenient. But when you are willing to stand up, there's no immediate instant gratification. It's not like that, you will immediately be called a hero. In fact, you may not be called a hero. But at some point in time, you will find that when you look into the mirror, when the lights are out and nobody's watching you, and you are talking to your conscience, you'll find that you are at peace with yourself, and there is no price that can be paid for that sense of peace. So I would like to tell you that, in your profession, you have to be a little bit like Lord Shiva. I don't mean to be, I don't mean to be I don't mean to be picking a religious example over other religions. I just want to look at it as a metaphor. Mythologically, Shiva is, he's called the Neelkanth. So his neck is blue because he took the poison of the world, but he doesn't gulp it, he keeps it here. If he gulps it, then he will die. So we should be able to deal with the poison of the world without us being impacted by it. So that is the real test. And at the end of the day, we have to have our own personal dictionary, our own lexicon, our own standards, our own code, and we have to follow that. It doesn't have to be my code, but don't lead life without a code. Whatever is that code, articulate that and stay true to that code. Does that make sense to you? Who asked me that question? What's your name? I can't hear you. Hemant. Okay, thanks Hemant for the question. Thank you. I must say another thing. A lot of people, high caliber individuals like you, end up doing the wrong thing because we get a sense of false anonymity. There will be situations in your life where you will feel that nobody's watching. It's called a false anonymity. And the internet gives us a lot of anonymity. And much of that is false anonymity. When we feel that nobody is watching, it can be a big temptation to quickly do something which is otherwise inappropriate. So whenever life throws in this false sense of security that nobody is watching, you are alone, just go to that point that you made in the video, the number 4 point, that if suddenly the lights are on and you find that 200 people or 100 people or 10 people are watching you, does it cause you embarrassment? If it is going to cause you embarrassment, it is perhaps not worth doing it. So keep in mind that we should not be prey to this enticement of false anonymity. Thank you, Hemant, once again. We have a hand here and a hand there. So somebody has to do there are already 2-3 questions. And please introduce yourself.
Hi sir, I am Tushar Chudlania from 5th year.
Say your name again.
Tushar Chudlania. In order to instill a sense of integrity in them, because I think a lot of their ads impacts us in our day-to-day lives. We just want to understand what goes at the highest level so that benefits percolates to all of us.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And interestingly, I don't go around talking to them about integrity. Okay? So I did that because I was coming here. Let me tell you a little bit about my work, then you will get the context. In Odisha, we have almost 4.5 crore of population, and the government has more than 20 institutes that do civil services training. So these are institutes that do civil service training for administrative officers, which is called the Odisha Administrative Service, Odisha Police Service, Forest Service, Revenue Service. There are institutes that do training for public representatives, elected public representatives, and so on. So, this year we stepped back and we looked at the year 2026. And we said in 2036, Odisha will become 100 years old as a linguistically organized state, India's first linguistically organized state, which is about 12 years away from now. Now, 2 interesting things are happening. One is that the citizen in 2024, going to be 24 years old, is a 12-year-old today. So today's 12-year-old, when will become a full-fledged 24-year-old, will have very different demands from the government. Will not be like how citizens were 10 years, 15 years ago or even today. So citizens' demand will change, expectations will change. There's very different generation. The second thing we realized is that the entry-level civil servant today is somebody who's pretty much like you. We'll have very different profile. So on one hand, the citizen profile is changing. On the other hand, the civil servant profile is changing. So just to give you an indication here, I was interacting with 200 entry-level Odisha Administrative Service and Odisha Revenue Service professionals. 25% of them are BTechs or MTechs. Almost 40% of them are women. There are people who have left behind, education in IIT and IIM to become an Odisha Administrative Service officer. So these are very ambitious people, they're very driven people, and they have a lot more clarity about what they want to do. They're doing many things out of choice, not because somebody told them to do it. So on one hand, the citizen profile is changing. On the other hand, the professional profile is changing. So we basically said that keeping these two factors in mind, the civil services training organizations will have to transform themselves to be relevant to both these categories. Many of the civil service organizations have been there for long years, some have been there for decades, and they tend to look at the world through the lens of training. They call themselves training institutions. And we are basically saying that the world has moved on. And you can train horses and dogs, you don't train human beings. You need to build a learning and development mindset, not a training mindset. So there are many factors like this, and we are currently in the process of making a blueprint for these institutions themselves to transform so that they're able to produce the right kind of civil servant for the emerging profile of the citizen. So that's broadly my charter. And we are in the process of creating the blueprint. So hopefully by the time a new government comes into place, we take a two-pronged view. One, we take a view of Odisha by 2030 and then Odisha by 2026 and do some long-acting laws. That's really my charter. And coming to the discussion on integrity, it is these institutions that have to actually in turn talk about integrity and encourage discussions about integrity. You can't just give a lecture on integrity on people. You have to actually create a dialogue so that people bring out issues related to integrity. And there's an open, healthy conversation about it. There were two questions here somewhere. There's a young lady there and a lady there, gentleman here.
Hello sir, I'm Krishna, I'm a web coder. So you talked about parents and a self-check for parents, but with the advent of disruptive technologies like AI, and you have been in the industry for so many years, so I think you will be the best to answer this question. With the advent of disruptive technologies, the idea of fairness, I think we cannot put it in a circle, right? It's very open-ended now. So, how do you think that this technology will affect the profession, especially our profession as a whole?
So you're talking about fairness while the world is dealing with disruptive technologies like artificial intelligence.
Yes.
And this is a very, very powerful question, actually. Fantastic question. And to understand the depth of this question, my mind is going back to a very famous book by a science fiction writer. I'm forgetting the name of the writer. I mean, at this moment it's just slipping my mind. can you throw some science fiction writers' names? People who wrote, somebody who wrote in the 1960s, 70s, science fiction writers' names? Arthur Clarke. Okay. So Arthur Clarke wrote a book which very few people, actually for some reason, very few people read. This book was book titled 1984. And Arthur Clarke wrote this book sometime, I think, in the 1970s or 80s. And he was talking about what the world will be 50 years from man's landing on moon. Neil Armstrong put his foot on moon in 1969, if you remember. So 50 years from then, after moon landing, Arthur Clarke was imagining what the world will be. And in this book, he has a chapter in which he is depicting a smart home. And imagine this book was published sometime in the 1980s. I read the book in 1980s. So here's a house where the house has got all the capability to anticipate the needs of the occupant. The occupant is a young man. So the house sets up the temperature control while the person is coming. The house actually keeps the coffee, hot and boiling while he is coming. Sets the temperature of the, water in the bathroom so that we can have a nice bath. Keeps everything ready. Anticipates the mood of this person and plays the appropriate music based on his mood. So this is actually the kind of home that we are beginning to see now. But he's talking about this, Arthur Clarke is talking about it way back in 1980s. But while doing all this, while caring for this occupant, the house actually begins to fall in love with the occupant. Begins to develop emotional connection with the occupant. The occupant one day actually brings a girlfriend, and the house becomes really, really mad about it. Gets very angry about it. So the jealousy becomes so strong that the house makes all the controls haywire, and in the process, the man is dead. Okay? So please have a quick all the controls in the house, the air conditioning, the heating, and everything else, the airflow, person dies. Police gets to know that there's a death. And the policeman pulls up, and policeman realizes that's a homicide. So policeman says to the house, you have a right to remain silent. So the house has murder, right? But behind the house is a whole bunch of software programs. So is the house the one that is killed, or is the software programmer who is killed? And is the software programmer who is killed, or is it regenerative artificial intelligence that we're talking about that is responsible for killing? So whole bunch of software, and not just one program, but a house today, an intelligent house has millions of lines of codes literally in the West. And now you give that house the ability to learn by itself. So who's really responsible? The house is the killer, the ability to learn is the killer, or the original set of software programs is the killer. So that brings us back to the question that you're asking. Now you look at this whole real life case study with the idea of fairness. Where is fairness in this? How do we establish fairness? Can machines be fair? If machines are learning by themselves, where do we make fairness? Very difficult question to answer where we are standing today. And this is where people like you, who are leaders, will have to influence standards. You will have to influence protocol. You will have to ask all the hard questions. You will have to show the real use cases. Unfortunately, people who are above their 50s today will have difficulty understanding some of these things as things are happening in the real time. So if you look at not just the example that I gave, but if you look at the world of fake news and deep fake and all that kind of stuff, the whole concept of fairness will have to be held up, and sometimes you don't know who you are going to show the light to. I think more than anything else, leaders will have to set the boundaries. Leaders will have to set the protocols. Leaders will have to ask the tough questions. And unlike in the earlier years where we could step back and watch something in slow motion, today we don't have that luxury. So things will happen in real time. And in that real time, we will have to take decisions and judgments and views, and we'll have to evolve as many things are just unfolding. So given that, the purpose of leadership and role of leadership and principle-centered leadership becomes very, very important. The second thing is hope. Humanity is based on hope. At no point in time have things gone out of control for humanity. That is how we have come so far. So I deeply believe that even as powerful technologies come, we will not be held hostage, because there will be the force of good as represented by people like you, who will hold technology to its responsible position, to its hold technology responsible, so that the lines are not crossed. So there is room for humanity, and the idea of leadership becomes even more important given the kind of situation that we are in. So thank you for that question. So in short, I must tell you, we don't know everything about everything, right? When we don't know everything about everything, it is very critical that principle-centered leadership becomes very important. Only that can save humanity and brings us back to a set of principles, a set of guiding lines with which we will hold ourselves responsible first.
Good evening, sir. Hi. Yeah, my name is Yasha Nandini. I'm in my fourth year right now. My question is basically, in your professional journey, is there maybe one incident which stands out to you, where you experienced maybe or observed somebody holding on to their integrity despite extreme adversities, or in the face of maybe a lot of professional, let's say, influence, or regardless of whatever, but they've stood their ground. Is there any example that comes to mind?
Well, I have actually so many examples. Early in my life, I was very fortunate to work for Azim Premji, the great earlier chairman of Wipro. Azim Premji inherited a fledgling business when his father died. When he was very young, Azim Premji was an engineering student at Stanford. So he had to come back immediately and take charge of his father's business, which was mostly loss-making. And young Premji at that time took a principled stand that he will live a life of integrity and he will run his businesses with integrity. It was very difficult because he would not even relate to this India, because basically India of the 1960s and 1970s actually, to be more specific. And everything was under control. There was a control regime and the government controlled everything. So when there is excessive control, people actually, because of the scarcity mindset that I talk about, people do, take shortcuts. So most businesses were corrupt in India. And then Mr. Premji said that he will run his businesses based on the principles of integrity. So it was very difficult. And he had to make very tough choices. Every day he had to make tough choices. one of the things that was happening was, you know, if you did not pay bribes, you didn't usually get government contracts. So Wipro typically never bid for government contracts, stayed away from government contracts. And very interestingly, not everybody in government is corrupt. So even in government, there are very honest officers. And when those officers were making decisions, they would make sure that Wipro comes into the frame and gets the business, because then they're signaling that no money changed hands. Which is very interesting to see how Wipro that shunned government contracts was actually pulled in with government contracts. But I will give you a very interesting example. Premji was setting up a plant near Bangalore. It was a process plant. One of the businesses that Premji's company was in was vegetable oils. So the plant was set up in a place on the outskirts of Bangalore. Everything was in order, the machinery came in. Now the power has to be connected for that process plant to begin its work. And the people who would give the power, they would want a bribe. And Premji would pay bribe. So they would dilly-dally. Now 15 days, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. Now they didn't get the connection and Premji didn't pay the bribe. Everybody was very worried. They said that it's a process plant. So if you don't actually energize the plant and use the plant will corrode. And once corrosion comes in, then the machinery will be useless. So what do you do? Premji said nothing to it. Let the plant idle. It was losing money. So it went on like that. At the end of 1 year, one day, out of sheer disgust, the fellows came and switched on the electricity and went away. They knew that it's no point wasting time with this guy. It's a very important story because, you know, the question was who is going to blink first. So Premji didn't blink. 1 year, he lost money. It didn't matter to him. But the lesson in this story is very important. Many of us in our personal dealings, we say, I'll be honest, I'll be fair, I'll be clear, but I will do that provided you give me one of the Padma awards. Because I've been honest, I've done things the proper way all my life, I should be given an award by the state. Or in my day-to-day dealing, there should be a red carpet for me. But when you follow the path of integrity, usually it is the inconvenient path. When you follow right is not always convenient. So if we want a quick cure, because I want to be principled, it can become very frustrating. To Premji, he didn't suffer this contradiction. He said, I will lead my businesses with integrity because I made that way, not because I want a certain glory or greatness. And for that, if the price is to be paid, I'll pay that price. So I think that is very, very inspiring. Very interestingly, you know, in the world of business, people say, does it pay to be fair? Does it pay to be honest? And Premji proved brilliantly that being honest makes good business sense. What really happens is, why did people like me come and work for Premji? I worked for Premji for 10 years. We did that because we knew that this man will never ask us to do something that our conscience did not permit. So what ended up happening is Wipro attracted outstanding people. I'm not calling myself outstanding, just so you know. I'm basically saying that many outstanding professionals came to Wipro because Wipro didn't expect them to do something wrong. And because outstanding people came, they in turn attracted great customers. Because customers like to work in a company which has got outstanding human potential or human capability. So it built what is called a virtuous cycle. And when the regulators work with Wipro, they deal with Wipro very differently. And when the stock market then looks at a company with high governance, also looks at that company very differently. So Premchand of the world proved that it makes good business sense to walk the path of fair and square. That makes sense? Thank you.
Good evening, sir. I am good. Firstly, thank you so much for coming here today. I don't really have a question in the strict sense of the word, but I do have some observations and reflections.
That's good. That's good. I love that.
Let me clarify something initially only. There is a misconception towards law students that they are always in the mood to debate. So they are always in the mood to debate. I have got no such intentions. I am looking for a fruitful discussion here. So, to begin with, I would like to commend you on the point that you said choosing between something which is right and something which is convenient. That's a really good philosophy, I feel. But coming on to today's topic, why do high achievers fail? I find these two terms, high achievers, problematic here. I think the root cause of this problem of lack of integrity stems from capitalism. Judging everything from the level of your income, high achievement in the sense of income. All these things are causes of the real trouble. Why can't we see life as a journey instead of seeing it as a race? Because if it's not a race, we are embracing individuality. We are embracing how an individual on a personal level is. Rather than linking achievement to integrity. That if you are an honest person, if you are an integrity person, that's a real achievement.
I tell you that, okay. So, thank you so much. You know, I basically wanted to hook you into listening to me. So I said, why you do high achievers fail? And that's why you guys turned up here. You don't want to fail. Otherwise, there's so many more interesting things to do. If I would have said, come listen to me talk about integrity, half of you would have come. But jokes aside, actually being high achievers, you are at a high risk. And let me tell you why. As high achievers, you will go very high in life. The problem with high achievers is that people will not tell you the truth. You know, when you are up there, you run the risk of being in a glass house. And when you are so good, you are so brilliant, and you become the boss one day, and you are susceptible, nobody will hold the mirror to you. And that is the problematic thing. I have seen that high achievers don't actually, they're their best friends and they're their own worst enemies. High achievers fail most of the times because of themselves, not because of external factors. So as a high achiever, because you're vulnerable, because nobody will show you the land, you need to know that a governance failure is just one step away. That is why I gave you the example of Bill Clinton. That is why I gave you the example of Rajat Gupta. And I can give you 20 such examples. So there are fools, but there are also good people who actually lose their way because they lose governance. One day it occurred to me, we talk about the DNA, right? So in your mind you imagine the double helix, right? The picture of the double helix. It's a spiral, right? It's got two staircases, two sides to a staircase. I kind of get the feeling that if you look at the double helix structure, it is like a metaphor. So you are factory fitted in, you are at a DNA level, you are designed to be a high achiever. So your formula of success is like on the left side of the double helix, and the formula of your failure or your formula of destruction is also in the same double helix on the right side. So my chances of failing is actually very intrinsic to me, and I need to be always aware of that fact. You talk about capitalism. It's easy to blame the external factors. Broadly, I agree with what you said, but it's got running from capitalism. High achievement individuals have failed in all kinds of systems. They failed even before capitalism was born. If you look at mythology of, if you look at religious scriptures, mythologies of all kinds of cultures, you will find examples. So the point I'm trying to make here is when you are a very high achievement individual, there is a potential that nobody brings you the bad news. So you need to be extra vigilant on your own thoughts and consequently on your own behavior. That's the point. But lovely, absolutely lovely, conversation, great dialogue. Thank you so much.
Sir, I have two more lines to add because since we're discussing about integrity, so I thought I should rather not restrict myself here. Sir, there is one of your points which I don't like. I very normally disagree with. As you said that we are inherently fair. I don't think that's the case. Rather, I think we are inherently corrupt, and it is the job of the civilization to make us fair. It is the job of our education system. It is the job of our institutions to make us fair, to imbibe in us the sense of integrity. Like we today have a motivation industry which is like shouting hell and heaven about how to run and how to be big. But nobody is talking about integrity. But again, if I say, like I personally feel we are not doing enough. But the fact that we are here today, we have taken time out of our schedule, it clearly shows that we have taken a step and we will someday succeed.
So, whenever there is something in short supply will be in high demand, because the conversation is in short supply, it will be in high demand. And don't wait for civilization to actually have this dialogue with you. You are very special. You are people who will shape not just the organizations that you lead, you will shape the destiny of countries. Some of you will shape this destiny of civilizations. So don't wait for the civilization and external influences to Are you able to hear me clearly? Yeah, so I'm basically saying that don't wait for the external world to initiate the dialogue and the discussion. I think you will do yourself a favor by initiating the dialogue and the discussion. Don't wait for it. You have to lead the way. Okay, I don't know how we are doing fine. One last question, please.
Good evening, sir. My name is Natasha Sinha from Sri University. I have one question. Many times it so happens that we see something extremely wrong happening right before us, but we fail to prevent it just because the culprit here is an own friend or a family member. So in such situations, how do we command our conscience and guiding principle to choose what's right than what's convenient for us? Because in such situations, we fail to confront our friend or our family member about what they are doing wrong. So how do we, in such situations, how do we choose to be, outspoken, fair, true, honest,
Thank you, whoever switched off the AC, thank you very much. There's so much nicer. I had a hard time listening to all of it. Now I can. So, what was the last part of your question?
So in situations like these, when we have our own family member or a friend doing something wrong, and we know they are doing it wrong, but we can't confront them just because we are afraid they will be hurt, or their sentiments would be hurt, our relationship would be hampered or something. So in such situations, how do we choose to be true than speaking what's wrong?
Yeah, so it's a truly difficult situation actually. When it's a loved one, basically you're seeing a loved one.
Yes.
So if you see your parent do something which is very wrong, how can you speak to them? If you see that a very close friend is doing something which is patently wrong, I think first and foremost it's important to ask yourself, what's the price you are willing to pay? Will you, if you broach this issue, so one is to be critical about it, then you will get a completely negative response. But if I don't want to be critical, but I want to actually have a conversation on the thing that is troubling me, bothering me, then that's probably an easier thing, relatively easier thing. But chances are, because I do that, you will alienate me. And am I willing to pay the price? To be very honest, am I willing to give up the friendship? If I feel that my parents are not following the path of integrity, or they're doing something which is in conflict with my own conscience, am I willing to walk out of home? Am I financially dependent? I have just 2 more years in university, and I'm financially dependent on it. And I know my father or my mother is, is corrupt and is not willing to change his or her ways. Very personal thing. Only you can resolve this yourself. It will be wrong on my part to say that, you do this or do that. Human beings are continuously making choices. And when you make a choice, you also choose the consequence. If you remain silent, if you are looking at your own advantage in the transaction, then obviously you lose the moral right to have the conversation later. And if you are willing to take the issue head on, you need to understand the consequences. And as long as you are comfortable with the consequences, you should make the choices. At the end of the day, it is about conscience. Somebody said that why should we be honest? Why should we live a life of propriety, of probity? Why should you lead a life of high integrity? End of the day, it is all about good sleep actually. They say that a clear conscience is the softest pillow. The other person, nobody knows whether there's heaven or hell. Everybody will go 6 feet down under one day. The sinner will, the saint will. But in between, the question is, do you value your sleep more? If you want a good sleep, then have a clear conscience. To have that clear conscience, you have to actually distinguish between black and white. And have those difficult conversations. And pay the price. Sometimes the price is difficult, emotionally difficult. I must tell you that on a very difficult conversation, I wrote a letter to a close, female relative in the family. And I wrote a letter on a matter where I felt deeply principled. I felt that what she was doing was wrong. This was the, days not of internet and things like that. So I sent her a handwritten letter. And she stopped talking to me for 10 years after that. She didn't talk to me. I felt terrible. I said, what have I achieved? I have not achieved anything. I sent her a letter and I was actually being very critical. So, sometimes while telling the truth, you don't achieve anything. Sometimes you actually lose relationships. But at the end of the day, you will have to say, were you truthful to your own self? And if you were, then it's worthwhile. Life is not always a popularity game. As long as you're clear about that. So, your friends, we all want to be very popular friends. We want to look the other way when we see our friend doing something which is not right, we don't buy into. But if that friend is not willing to see your reason, is not willing to discuss it, is not willing to mend, probably will be a liability for you. So is that friendship working? Probably not. But only you can be the judge. Because you know the full facts, you have all the data. But it's very important not to kid yourself. I'll end by telling you another Premji formula. So, when there is violation of integrity, then leadership has to brace, and leadership has to basically take a black or white view of it. Either you have paid a bribe or you have not paid a bribe. Either you have done sexual harassment or you have not done sexual harassment. So Premji used to say that when you look at violation of ethics, violation of integrity, you have to, as a leader, you have to clearly distinguish between the black and the white. Because if you start getting lost in the grays in between, there are many shades of grey. The human eye is trained to distinguish 108 shades of grey. You go to a radiologist, they look at an X-ray film, it's basically grayscale. And a radiologist is trained to see different scales of grey. And a trained radiologist can actually distinguish between 108 scales of grey. If you go to a CT machine or an MRI machine, then of course it can be even much, much higher. So the moment you get lost in the grey, then you will not be able to be truthful. So the hard thing is to be able to say that you will choose between black and the white. One of the things that Premji used to do is he would say that in the event that integrity has been violated, okay, irrespective of who is involved and what is the cost to the business, that individual has to go. So imagine a situation where you find a sexual harassment issue come up, and it involves the president of the company, okay, president of the business unit, and you are in Premji's shoes, and it is the most profitable business unit. And the financial year closing is just another week from then, and that's an inconvenient time to actually tell the whole world that there is an issue involving sexual harassment with the president of the business unit. So you are basically getting into shades of grey because of who is involved. And secondly, sometimes it's the cost to the business. So imagine that on Monday there is a really large business transaction that is going to be decided upon, and chances are very high that the business is going to be given to your company. And on Friday evening, you realize that the salesperson who was actually dealing with it from your side with the client organization has violated integrity. So the question is, are you going to sack that person on Friday, or will you sack that person on Tuesday? So if you sack that person on Friday, you may lose the business because a scandal may break out. But if you actually sack that person on Tuesday, you save the business. So which one will you do? So Premji's view was white, and don't get lost in the gray because there are many shades of grey. And that is where true leadership comes in. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Mr. Bagchi for such an enlightening session. We understand that many of you must have had questions for Mr. Bagchi. Please feel free to send in your queries via mail to IQAC and we will forward the same to sir. We now request our Vice Chancellor, Vedna, to present Mr. Bagchi with the memento. To conclude today's event, we would request our esteemed Registrar, Professor Dr. Rangeen Tripathi, to give the vote of thanks for today's event.
Thank you. When Mr. Bagchi mentioned about the responsibility of having to choose between what is right and what is easy, my mind immediately went to Professor Dumbledore. Those who have read Harry Potter or have watched Harry Potter will have heard about the iconic Professor Dumbledore, who was the principal of the Hogwarts School of Magic and Witchcraft. And at the end of the first book in the first movie, when he's awarding some last minute points for showing extreme courage to Harry Potter and his friends, one of the things that he awards is to a child called Neville Longbottom. Because he had the courage to stand up to his friends. And then he makes the statement that the most difficult thing in life is to stand up to your friends. That is the hard part. The easy part would be not to stand up to your friends when you think they're doing something wrong. So, thank you, Mr. Bagchi, for personally taking me back to that memory, which is almost 2 decades old. There is something else that I want to mention here. It was May 2020. COVID was ravaging our lives. And the High Court of Odisha Division Bench had just delivered an order wherein they had directed that any migrant labor coming back to Odisha, they cannot board transport from their host state unless they produced a negative certificate. So that particular High Court order essentially said that migrant laborers of Odisha cannot sit in a bus, cannot sit in a car, cannot sit in a train, cannot begin their journey back home unless they got tested first and they had a negative report. And I wrote an op-ed criticizing that judgment. And while I was writing, I obviously talked about how this does not make sense under Article 19. It's not the job of the judiciary to create reasonable restrictions, but it is the job of the judiciary to review any reasonable restrictions which have been created by the executive or the legislature to whether those restrictions are right or wrong. I also talked about how the judiciary was infringing on something which is a very, very dynamic policy issue, and it is beyond the judicial remit to do so. But I also wanted to say that this is just immoral. Because something is unconstitutional, something is illegal, something is unlawful, all that aside, something is just immoral. And while I wanted to substantiate that, I had the fortune of quoting Mr. Bagchi. He had at that time given an interview, and where the whole of India was drowning in political whataboutery, deflecting of blame, and whatnot. Something that had said, which I had listened to at that time, stuck with me. He had said that the government of Odisha looks at the issue of migrant laborers as children returning to their mother. And beyond all politics, beyond it becoming an issue of logistics, I found that to be an extremely moral statement. That your own people are trying to return home, that's it. Cook had said. And I wanted to thank him again today. Because when we talk about life, when we talk about what we are supposed to do, but when we plan our life, we often forget how important morality is to our identity individually and also collectively. So thanks a lot, Mr. Bagchi, for being that face of reality, for being that voice of morality amidst the cacophony that surrounds us. And I thank Mr. Bagchi for agreeing to come visit us, to give us so much of time. Thanks a lot to you, sir. I am thankful to Professor Ved Kumar, your Vice Chancellor, who took the initiative within a very short time after meeting Mr. Bagchi that we have to have him here. We cannot use this opportunity of interacting with him. So before he starts traveling anywhere else, let's have him here. So thank you, ma'am. Thanks to the IQAC team, all administrative staff who organized this thing at such a very short notice. Thanks to all the students who have turned out in great numbers and availed this opportunity to interact with him. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.